as I begin, I just want to let you know, it may sound at the beginning like it's a little bit of a downer, and please, we will get to the hope and the joy that this message is about. But, what prompted this message for me was, just watching all the news. ISIS is still on the move. The pictures of Syria and the bombings that continue to take place, and ceasefires that they planned, ceasefires that don't work, and aid that they expect to get there, and aid is not getting there. And my heart is grieved when I see that. The refugee crisis. I don't know if you saw the interview with the King of Jordan saying we just can't handle anymore. Bombings in cities like Nice, France, and Istanbul. You may not be aware of this, but we had some students who were there in Istanbul at the time of the bombing. Thankfully, they weren't at the airport, but that's pretty close to home for us. The dangers of North Korea and, of course, the nuclear war. What is Russia doing? Who knows? I mean, all these world headlines all around, and I'm going, God, what's happening? It feels like a world is out of control. And then I look at our own nation, and the shootings, Dallas, a tragedy. My concern for any group of people that feel that they're targets, so this isn't a political statement on either side. We have a nation that is in turmoil over this. We don't know who to trust. We don't know if we can trust the police or not. We don't know if we can trust politicians or not. Oh my good, politics. And I'm not even going there. Oh my goodness, I'm serious. I've never been a big politics person. I recognize how important it is. So understand I'm involved, but it's not the area that I read in a lot. But it seems to me I've never, in my lifetime, have sensed such a despair over the prospects of where we're going to vote. Whatever side you're on. I haven't found anybody other than the few that maybe are supportive going, I don't know what to do. And what does this mean for our nation? And I've heard arguments why we need to vote one side or the other. But what I hear is almost like a hopelessness. That's been surprising to me. Almost like, it doesn't matter which way we vote because we're just going downhill anyway. There's just this pessimism that is out there. And you look in people's eyes and you hear their voice, and there's just this sense of the world is spinning out of control. Where is there any hope? It reminded me of, this might surprise you, but I think maybe only a few of you looking at the ages of those who are here, okay? I'm 54, so I would not have remembered this song when it came out. But you realize this was the #1 song in September of 1965, #1 on the billboards, okay? I was 3, I don't remember it. But it's something it's been pretty popular through the years, so you might recognize this. Listen to the second verse here. Don't you understand what I'm trying to say? Can't you feel the fear that I'm feeling today? If the button is pushed, there's no running away. There'll be no one to save with the world in the grave. Take a look around you, boy. Yeah, look around you, boy, and you tell me over and over and over again that you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction? Barry McGuire. Now, he didn't write the song. He's the one who made it popular. That is not a message of hope. That is almost what I'm feeling today. Sometimes even within the church, as I've heard people talk about the issue of where are we going? What's going to happen to our nation? What's going to happen after the election and those type of things? And if we're not careful, you and I can get swept up in the riptide of the despair and the pessimism that should not be part of the family of God. Now, please hear me. I'm not trying to be trite or trivial, say, hey, what happens out there doesn't matter, and Jesus is coming back one day, and who cares? He is coming back. We do care about the world where we're called to make a difference and be salt and light. But that's different than saying, having absolute despair about the world that we're in, feeling like there is just absolutely no hope. And we begin to think really that there's just really no hope, and who cares? In fact, some people want to liken it to maybe we're just like the Titanic. It's going to sink anyway. But that's not the biblical perspective. It is not the way God looks at the world. And what I want to do today, in light of this God talks, that it does make a difference to hear his voice, let's hear a different voice today, if we could, from God's word about what he says about this world and the condition we're in. Because I think it can really help us. And what I want us to walk away with is something very clear today, recognizing that God is in control and God does care. So let's look at that today. Now, we've had the passage read to us. I want to open your eyes a little bit. I want us to step into the shoes of the prophet Isaiah this morning. As we read, you saw that he had a vision. Now, Isaiah is a prophet in his day. He's a prophet in the city of Jerusalem, which is called the southern kingdom. And he's in the 8th century, 700 BCs. And if you remember our text, it begins this way. It almost sounds so nondescript. In the year that King Uzziah died. We kind of go, okay, let's move on to something a little more exciting. I mean, seraphim and smoke, but in the year that King Uzziah died. What I'd like you to hear is something like this. In the year that Pearl Harbor was bombed. In the year that our boys and women were sent off to Vietnam. In the year that the 2 towers fell. See, that's what that timestamp does here. In the year that King Uzziah died, the name is foreign to us, but Uzziah reigned 52 years. 52 years. He's the longest reigning king in Israel's history. And what's happening in the prophet's life is this. This long reigning king, though he wasn't perfect, was a good king. Not all of them were. He was reasonably good, and now he's died. The heavenly monarch, the one who is ruling in Israel, has now died. And you can imagine the prophet going, well, what happens now? Well, you go, well, it can't be that big a deal. Kings die and other kings come. Yeah, but his son is Ahaz. Now, again, a name you maybe don't know, but Ahaz was not a good king. In fact, Ahaz is the one who's going to sell Israel into captivity. He's just going to sell the nation out. And Isaiah is aware not only of the fact that the king has died, that puts him in a quandary. He knows who's coming up as a king. That's not a good choice. And then he also knows, even though they didn't have the TV and the tweets and all that we have today, he knew that there was a power in the north called Assyria that is once again rising into power. And we can look back today and know that they're going to rise into power and come down and conquer. And Isaiah says, what's going to happen? God, what's going to happen to our world? And it's not told to us directly, but we can see in this passage that Isaiah is given a vision of something that is it's supposed to change his perspective, and I want it to change ours today. I want you to step into the shoes of Isaiah and see what he sees. Remember, the earthly monarch has died. So what happens? God gives him a vision, forcing his eyes upward, if you will, and what does he see? Listen to the description again. And I saw the Lord, please note that, I saw the Lord seated on a throne, high and exalted, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Isaiah looks up, and in this vision, he sees this incredible throne with God seated upon it. Now, it's a vision, but he sees God seated upon it, and this throne is exalted up, speaking about the greatness of the one who's on the throne. And the idea of his robe filling the temple, you go, well, what is that all about? In the ancient world, the grandeur of the train of the robe meant the greater grandeur of the king. It was part of that pomp and circumstances. He looks up and he sees this elevated throne. He sees the robe all around him. And then what does he see? The thing that we always get enamored with. He sees these 6-winged beings, that this is the only place in Scripture where they're described. We call them seraphs or seraphim. Now the word seraph in Hebrew just means burning ones. So we're not totally sure. We know they're angelic beings, but we don't know a lot about them. We do know that they have 6 wings. With 2, they cover their face, it says, out of humility and respect to the one on the throne. With 2, they covered their feet, symbolizing, again, humility. But with 2, they flew around. And then it says in that, they begin to hear things. Now, we tend to think when you read this text, you tend to think they're singing. But if you read it carefully, it says they're calling out to one another. It's the word cacophony. And the idea is this. Over from this side, you hear holy. And then over here, you hear holy. And then from this side, you hear it. And this is what they actually hear in the Hebrew. Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Adonai Sabaoth. Holy, holy, holy is, notice the title, the Lord of hosts. This is the Lord who commands the armies of all heaven. See, what Isaiah sees, and it just overwhelms him when he sees the angelic beings, the smoke. I mean, the smoke is such a common theme when you have what we call theophany, God appearing. Think about God appearing of the Ten Commandments, and the mountain shook, and there were clouds. This is such a common theme that you'd see throughout the Old Testament. Isaiah sees all of that. He sees the smoke. He sees the angelic beings. He hears this cry. And he seems to be overwhelmed by it because he almost seems to be, we don't know this, but it seems like he's backing up. Because he says even the threshold of the door began to shake. You know, the threshold is the most stable part. And it appears that Isaiah has backed as far as ways he can of the temple to the very doorway as he watches with her, and he's overwhelmed. Now, we're not going into the story today where he says, woe is me, I'm unclean. I mean, the holiness of God has so overwhelmed him that his own sinfulness is just exposed. But what I want you to see today is what is in this first part. What Isaiah sees and what you and I need to see today is this key truth, that yes, the earthly monarch has died. Uzziah is dead. You don't know what's going to happen with Assyria. You don't know what's happening with Egypt. You don't know what's happening with Babylon and all these other nations around in the world, the Hittites, everybody. And you don't even know what this means for your nation, being that you've got an ungodly king, Ahaz, who doesn't trust God and doesn't love him. But Isaiah, look up. Because there's somebody else who's seated on the throne who never abandons his throne. What God is telling Isaiah is, yes, I know that the earthly throne has been vacated, but God never abandons his throne. He rules and he reigns. And this is so important for us today. And what I want to do with you is really give you two really basic foundational truths, but I think they're crucial for what we're going through today. And I hope you'll walk out of here today encouraged through that. First one. So what does it mean that God is on the throne? It means that God is in control. Pretty straightforward. God is in control. He is aware of all that's going on in this world. Nothing catches him by surprise. Now, I teach theology, and a lot of people go, well, kind of what that is. We're the people they put in the back corner, kind of, we do, we help prepare, but they don't bring us up much to see light. So I'm excited to be here. I don't get out much, so thank you, so this is fun. But we use a word called sovereign. We say God is sovereign. Well, what in the world does that mean? It means there's a God who's in control. It doesn't mean, this is really important, it doesn't mean that God causes everything, but it does mean that God is in control of everything. Now that may seem simple, and insignificant, but I want to unpack that a little because it's really important. If you hold to a view that's called determinism, you hold to a view that says that God causes everything. And some people kind of do that by default. And sometimes we do it without even thinking about it. You get up this morning for church, you walk out, your car has a flat tire. You go, why did God give me a flat tire? As if the rule of the universe is spend all eternity and he's going to give you a flat tire, okay? You're driving through Starbucks today and it's a long line. Why did God make it a long line? He knows I'm in a hurry. It's like everything that happens in this world. Well, those are kind of silly, but why did God give me cancer? Why did God take my child? I mean, that's where it gets quiet and serious. Because when you hold to determinism, you actually end up with a view of God causing everything, good and evil, and that's not the biblical picture. When we talk about God being sovereign, it doesn't mean that he causes everything. But I want to be clear we don't go the opposite direction as well, because this is another one I've heard, even in Christian circles, not determinism, but deism. Now, that's an older view, but basically, to keep it simple, says this. God created the world. He doesn't do any more with it. He created the world, but he doesn't get involved in it. Well, that certainly can't be biblical because we have a God who heals. We have a God who provides. We have a God who intervenes and does the miraculous. We have a God who answers prayer. You can't believe in a God who answers prayer and be a deist because you'd say God doesn't get involved, but he does. And so what we're seeing when we talk about a God who is sovereign, we're talking about a God who is in control. Now, let's be honest here, okay? That's what these God talks are about. Let's bring up the questions that's always hard. But sometimes I pray and I don't see the answer. Sometimes I don't like what I see coming my way. And if God is sovereign and we really are in his protective hands and nothing comes our way but through his hands, which I do affirm, he is sovereignly in control, though he doesn't cause everything. But why is this still happening to me? Lots of years of schooling in the area of theology. Can I tell you the biblical answer? We don't know. We don't know. Okay, we don't always know why things happen. For my wife and I, and again, I wouldn't share this if she didn't know and give me permission, we always wanted kids. We were never able to have kids. We had miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage. I don't know why God didn't choose to heal so we could have kids. Even to this day, I can't answer. And you'll get people who go, well, because now you can give your time to your students, or you can put whatever explanation you want. I just don't know the answer. I mean, I watch unbelievers have kids, and I'm a believer trying to serve him, can't have kids. So affirming God's sovereignty doesn't mean I always understand everything. But I tell you what it does. Like a young child who trusts their parent, there's a sense of going, God, you know what? I don't always understand, but I do know this. I can trust your character. I trust who you are. I know you're good. And I love, this isn't original me, but somebody said it this way: when you can't see the hand of God, you trust his heart. You know who he is. And so we do know that God is sovereign. And this is a truth that comes all throughout Scripture. If you know the book of Daniel, God gives Daniel a vision of kingdoms that are going to come and fall. He'll talk about the Babylonian Empire. He'll talk about even the coming of Greece and Rome. Well, what is that supposed to do? It doesn't answer all the questions, but it does tell Daniel, I'm in control. Nothing is going to catch me by surprise. I know the beginning from the end. You look at the book of Revelation, of course, we're trying to figure out all the imagery and what this all means and the time things and all that. Besides all of that, here's the one thing you need to get out of Revelation. God is in control. He knows the beginning from the end. He will never leave or forsake you. You don't need to fear. The book is supposed to intend to engender confidence and assurance. God is in control. We can trust him. In fact, I think about what Jesus said to his disciples, and you'll remember this verse. In this world, you will have trouble. But take heart, because I have overcome the world. So, family, what I'm trying to suggest to us here is that God is sovereign. I recognize it doesn't answer every question we have on issues, but we do know this, that we are in his protective hands. He cares for us. He watches over us, and we don't need to fear. That includes worldwide events, nation events, but this is where I'd like us to end today, because I want us to turn to us personally. Because, it's easy to go, well, okay, I can see God being the God of the master of the universe and knowing where kingdoms will come from and nations will come and fall and big world events, but certainly he's not looking at my little life. My little world. Come on, I'm not that important. My goodness, I teach in Waxahachie. That's not a big city, okay? All right. No offense to Waxahachie, but I'll probably get in trouble if anybody hears this, but it's Waxahachie, okay? I'm from Seattle, okay? It's definitely not Seattle, but but God cares about your situation. He's not only sovereign over the world, but he cares about you. God's power and his providence is not just for the big events of this world, but also for the events of your life. It really is. He does care about you personally. Not just broadly as a group of people, not just Grace as a church, he does, but you personally. He's a God big enough to hear, to care. And so I'd like you to recognize that the God of Isaiah's vision is the same God who tells you things like this. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, in prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And what's the result? And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding. It doesn't make sense. How can you have peace in this situation? Because I've looked up beyond the earthly situation. I've looked up and I recognize there's somebody who is ruling and reigning, who's far above this, and even if I don't understand, he can bring me peace. Well, often, my wife and I will often share our story, what our struggles, just to be open with people and to help them understand. We're not talking out of never having troubles or whatever that situation, and we recognize our troubles aren't necessarily greater than anybody else. We know that. But we'll often get the question of, we're so sorry for you. We hope you're okay. We go, no. Yeah, I would still wish we had kids, if I'm being honest with you, even at this age. Now, everybody goes, yeah, but remember Abraham and Sarah. I recognize Abraham and Sarah. And now we kind of go, now we're not sure if it would be funny or not at this age, but we do know that can happen. But can I tell you that in our prayers and supplications and our cries of God and saying, God, we don't understand, why not? That God has brought healing. He's brought peace. Not necessarily the answer, because we can trust him, and he'll do the same for you. I think about this passage, and we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. Now, that passage isn't saying that God causes everything that's in your life, but it is saying this, that God is working in your life, and whatever comes to pass, he is going to somehow use it for your good, because he cares for you. You're not abandoned. You're not left alone. He's never left that throne. And maybe this last verse is one along with our passage, I'd really like you to take with you today. I don't know what situation you're in, what you're facing. It may be that you have been concerned about the world events. I mean, they are disturbing. I know that Austin Round Rock is a pretty international town, and there's got to be people here who have family members in areas where it's very dangerous and concerned about family members. We heard about an individual having cancer. That's a hard report to get. What does that mean? What does that mean for the future? Boy, we can get real personal. You're getting close to retirement. Is there going to be retirement? Will I have a job? People are losing jobs all over the place, and retirement's gone. Everything you had just wiped out. Will there be Social Security? I don't know. I mean, I've heard there won't be. I don't know. Again, fear of the future. How will I provide for my family? I mean, these are real things. It may be your situation where you have a loved one who you're going, I'm watching them go astray. And it's breaking my heart. I'm watching their life be destroyed. What do I do? Those are real events. Those are real hard life events. And it's times like that this to me is where theology becomes real, where I can stand on the foundation of knowing this truth. And it's this one I want to put on the screen that basically says, be still and know that I am God. Be still. That be still is a statement of comfort. Not meaning it doesn't matter. It's not, please don't hear this as if God is saying, hey, come on, get over it. It's not that big a deal. No, it's a big deal. But he's a big God. And he's saying, be still. I want you to know whatever you're going through, I am there. I'm with you. I haven't abandoned you. I'm still ruling and reigning. Whatever happens in this world, I am here for you. Probably most of you won't know this older hymn because we don't sing a lot of hymns today. But I wanted to end with this, just this one line, because though the hymn style is a little older, the truth that's there is so powerful to me. And it just says this: this is my Father's world. Oh, let me ne'er forget. that though the wrong seems often strong, God is the ruler yet. This is my Father's world. Why should my heart be sad? The Lord is King. Let the heavens ring. God reigns. Let the earth be glad. I want to tell you, whatever situation you're in, God is with you. Pastor.